I've spoken with many people over the years, talking with them about their sex addiction. And in every single case that I can recall, sex wasn't really their problem. Hello friend, and welcome to Sex Addicted Christian, where I am here to help you crush the shame, cultivate community, uncover the unseen, and take action. I'm your guide, Jimmy Trent, and I'm so glad to be with you today. Before we get into our topic of porn not being your problem, I want to give you a free gift. If you go to my website, sexaddictedchristian.com, I have written a guide, The 4 Pillars of a Porn-Free Life, as a free gift to you to help you on this journey to freedom. As you'll see in our discussions today and in the following ones to come, there is a lot of work to do, and I wanted to try to simplify that down into the 4 pillars: crushing the shame, cultivating community, uncovering the things we can't see, and taking action. So please, as a gift from me to you, go grab that guide. I want to talk to you today about the fact that I believe that porn is not your true problem. I've spoken with many people over the years, talking with them about their sex addiction. And in every single case that I can recall, sex wasn't really their problem. The language of sex addiction tends to lead us to our behavior, but what I've learned through all of my experiences and chatting and my own issues and dealing with my own stuff is that sex really isn't the issue. There's something underneath and deeper beneath that we've got to get to if we want to really find freedom that we desire to have. Now, don't get me wrong. Your porn addiction or lust, masturbation, whatever it is certainly an issue that needs to be addressed. But if we want to seek and find the true freedom that we long for, we've got to get beneath the problem of our behavior and get down deeper into what's really rooted there. So your problem with porn lies somewhere beneath the surface. I want you to think of it in this way. The porn addiction that you have really is fruit on a tree. And if you were going to try to kill a fruit tree, you certainly wouldn't just pick its fruit, because you could pick the fruit off the tree and then tomorrow another fruit grows and you pick that one and another and another and another. And we find ourselves just picking off the fruit of the tree. And if we really want to kill the fruit tree, what do we need to do? We've got to get down to the root. We've got to kill it at the root. And so what I'm wanting for us to consider today is what it looks like to get beneath the behavior and down deep into our hearts, where our heart's root is truly what's giving us the problem. Jesus points us to this very reality when he speaks of good and bad trees in Luke chapter 6. He says that you'll know a good tree by its fruit. And he concludes with this piece of wisdom in Luke 6. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. There it is, the root. The root of our behavior is in our hearts. So porn, our fruit, is driven by our heart, which is our root. So if you want to deal with your sex and porn addiction, we have to do more than strategize for our behaviors, but we've got to dig deeper into the deep recesses of who we are in our being, the drives in our heart that lead us to our actions. That will be the key to lasting change. So let's discuss our first point: porn as fruit. Porn is nothing more than roots planted poorly in our lives. I love what David says in Psalm 139 when he points us to get beneath our behavior and into our thoughts and subsequently into our hearts. Listen to what he says in Psalm 139. David says in Psalm 139, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me." What David's doing here is David is giving us kind of a 3-part idea in terms of who we are. And we oftentimes start on the outside and stay there whenever he says, "Try me and see if there be any grievous way in me, I'm certain that you are clearly aware that your porn or sex or lust addiction is something in your actions on the outside that you want to get rid of, or you wouldn't be here today. But David is saying that's not all that I am. Underneath that is my thoughts. What is my thought life doing? Who am I in here? What am I thinking about? How is my mind contributing to my actions? But David goes just a little deeper, and he says, to the deepest part of who I am, search me, O God, and know my heart. There we are, the heart, porn as fruit of the root, which is our heart that David points us to in Psalm 139. This then is the heart of man. Our hearts are the driving center of our lives. It is the place in which all other things flow. We see this clearly in Proverbs 4:23, where we see that from the heart flow the springs of life. And subsequently, he says, we should guard it with all diligence. So again, Jesus says that good trees bear good fruit and bad trees bear bad fruit. He then says that out of the good treasure in a man's heart, he bears good fruit, or vice versa. So now combining what Jesus is saying in Luke 6 with what we're learning from the Psalms and the Proverbs about our hearts being the root or the center or the drive, we can now see that the metaphor that Jesus is giving us in Luke chapter 6 is expanded to good fruit is coming from a good root, or bad fruit is coming from a bad root. So having established that there's more to us than just our behaviors, we need to dig deeper. We need to get beneath the surface of our actions and find out what's underneath that's driving our porn, our lust, our sex addiction. So that brings me to our second point, which is we have to dig deeper to find freedom. We are just often too lazy. We're too shallow to really dig deep enough to find freedom from our porn addiction. I've got a confession to make. I'm a little obsessive about my lawn. I love having a really wonderful, lush, green, perfectly manicured lawn. And so sometimes I'll spend minutes, if not hours, sometimes in the lawn. And one of the things that I have to do regularly in the lawn is pick weeds out of the lawn. So my boys were helping me just the other day. And as we were going through picking these weeds, my boys would do exactly what I'm saying we shouldn't do with our porn addiction, is they would go to a weed and they would simply just pick the leaves right off the top. And as they picked the leaves off the top, I said, boys, look, I've got to teach you something about picking weeds from the lawn, right? Because if they only pick the weeds from the lawn, it'll look great for the moment. Everything's going to look awesome right now, but 2 or 3 days later, those weeds will grow right back. So I had to show them how to follow the leaves down the stalk of that weed, down to its base where it meets the ground. And from there, you have to grasp that weed and gently pull. And as you pull it out, you'll see all of the roots that are underneath. And then, and only then, will we be able to rid ourselves of that weed. Porn, sex addiction is no different. And that's what I'm begging us to work on. Our porn and sex addiction is just like these weeds. If we simply pick the fruit and try to change our behavior, we may get it together for a day or 2 days or a couple weeks or months, but rest assured your addiction will roar back up to the surface again if you don't get underneath to the root. The root is the thing that we have to address. Don't get me wrong. Your sexual behaviors that are not in line with God's will and what He desires for you and what He's created for you have to be addressed. So don't get me wrong. I want you to not look at porn. I want you to not sleep with other women. I want you to not go to the strip clubs. Trust me, I want that for you because the consequences are so bad. However, I want long and lasting change for you. And so we've got to dig deeper. So what then is the root? What then is the sin under the sin of sex addiction? I wish this part were easier, but it's not. This most likely is the most challenging yet most rewarding part of your recovery. Let me give you a for instance from James chapter 4. James is speaking to the church and he asked them a very interesting question. He asked them, what is it that's causing these fights and quarrels among you? Apparently the church that James is writing to is in conflict with one another. And so he's asking a kind of a rhetorical question. Of course, it's a letter, so they can't answer back, but he's going to ask the question and then offer his answer. So he asked them, why is it that you guys are in conflict? And then he says this, is it not this, that your passions or your desires are at war within yourself? And that's leading you to this place of conflict, this place of anger. He says, you desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and you quarrel. So James is very clearly connecting their behavior to this underlying root thing of their desires. And this is a core piece of what we are trying to solve. So the same question can be asked of you when you consider your addictive behavior or your stuckness with porn. What is it deep down underneath that you're desiring so much that's leading you into this? Remember what I said at the beginning, that I don't think sex is your problem. I don't think porn is your true problem. I think there's something deeper in you that you find when you go to your porn addiction, or when you lust, or when you go to sex. So what is that for you? As I mentioned before, this is not an easy part to the process. This is hard. So you're going to have to really work at this, and having community and having others around you, being able to talk with others about your life is going to help you uncover this. But maybe you can start with just a couple questions as you reflect on your addiction. I want you to start taking notes of what's happening in your life and in context with your life as you find yourself struggling with porn or lust or sexual deviant behavior. As you look back at those moments when you act out, I want you to ask yourself, what was going on? Was I struggling at work? Was there some relationship that wasn't going well? What were the highs and the lows happening in that moment? What emotions were you feeling as you entered into that the day before, the hours before, or the hours after? Do these questions reveal anything to you about what you were wanting or desiring or hoping for, what you may have not gotten that you wanted, or what you may have lost that you wanted to hold on to? All these self-reflective questions are going to guide and lead you to see the deeper thing in you, the root that we're looking for. So as you uncover this thing that you have yet to see, the desire or the root in your heart, I want to leave you with the same thought that James leaves the church when he's writing to them, asking them to consider their war-waging desires that are in their heart. He says to them, you don't have because you don't ask. This is an extremely important sentence in this paragraph, because in this moment, James is taking their attention from off of each other, and he's asking them to look up, to look up. He says they don't have because they don't ask. Asking who? He goes on to say, you haven't asked God for the very thing that you desire. And this, friend, is where you are going to find your freedom, is whenever you can uncover the unseen thing, the root in your heart, and be able to say, this is the thing that I want so desperately that I'm not getting. And so I run to porn, I run to lust, I run to sexually addictive behavior, and I try to find all of my desires fulfilled in anything other than the God who created me and loves me. So he's asking us, look up to God and ask him for the very thing that your heart desires. As we continue to put our hearts out into the world and ask everything other than God to fulfill those things in us, we will continually be let down. The craving will continue to stay. The craving will grow and will never, ever be satisfied. You and I have to. It is an absolute necessity that we get beneath the fruit, and we get to the root, and we uproot these things and bring them before our God who loves us. Then, friend, then and only then will you and I live out the freedom that we've been created for. Well, that's all the time we have for today, friend. And before I let you go, I want to give you something. I know how hard this road of recovery is. And so to help you guide you along the way in your journey towards freedom, I've written a guide, a 4 pillars of a porn-free life guide. And that guide is going to walk you through the 4 main pillars: the crushing of the shame, where we can deal with the shame that surrounds our pornography addiction or our sex addiction, and then cultivate community and building a good, healthy, amazing team around us. And then, as we've talked today a lot about uncovering the unseen, getting beneath the surface, there's a whole pillar that I want to help you do that. And then lastly, to be able to call yourself to action, to put yourself in position to win in the long term, to put all these things that you learn together into a plan. So I would love to give that to you. If you go to the website, sexaddictedchristian.com, you can click right there at the bottom and download the guide. It's a free gift from me to you. I want to help you. I want to serve you. Freedom is on its way. It's so good to see you. And until next time, go in peace.